to go live. All right. Well, I think we are live. Guys, for the very first time, we're giving this a shot. So if it goes horribly, horribly wrong,
it's his fault.
It's my fault. 100% my fault. So just bear with us. But we are excited because we've got someone on the show today that is an expert in expanded states and how expanded states can actually help with mental health and all kinds of really amazing things that we're excited to talk to him about today. His name is Michael Tierno, and we could not be more thrilled to have him with us today. So Michael, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a real honor to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. For those of you who are watching, if you have any questions, please feel free to lay down some comments, lay the questions in the comments, and we'll be happy to bring them in if I can think of it, because I'm not good at doing multiple things. So we'll give this a shot. But all right,
it's like the Wild West.
It is the
Trial
Wild
by
West.
fire.
It feels weird, but okay, here we go. All right, Michael, we are going to talk to you about all things expanded states, and specifically, you do an ayahuasca retreat in Peru. So you've got a lot of experience with this kinds of things. But let's define expanded states methodologies just to make sure that we are on the same page first and foremost.
Sure. So I think of expanded states as anything that sort of brings us out of our regular state. So this could be deep states of meditation. It's most fundamental. It could be breath work is a powerful way to, hyperventilation, like holotropic breath work. And then of course, all of the medicines that we can use that are becoming so popular and well recognized now, and the FDA is looking into them. And there's all kinds of studies like psilocybin and MDMA, ketamine, and a whole host of other ones, LSD, which isn't being looked at that much right now because of how long it takes. So anything that kind of brings you out of your regular, sense of normality can be an expanded state. It can even be going to a dance club and listening to music real loud, and you get that feeling of a rush and like the crowd and stuff. I consider that to be an expanded state. So it's more levels of degree rather than kind, because expanded states is just anything in my sort of vocabulary to encapsulate everything. It's anything that is outside of the regular, what you or I would consider like a regular state of being.
Okay.
So how does being in an expanded state, how can that be helpful?
I think the most simple way to describe how it can be helpful and why it's helpful for so many things is because it gives you a different perspective. Just think about any time you have a different perspective. So we're always kind of looking through the lens of our experience and our worldview. And whenever you're in an expanded states, whenever you can be in an expanded state, it gives you an opportunity to look at the same thing from a different perspective. Classically, some examples are, let's say you're working with one that I like to use is thinking about our parents. Lots of times people have a lot of anger towards their parents, or they could have done better or whatnot. And one of the things that I've witnessed many, many times is a realization of like seeing things through their parents' eyes, not literally, but recognizing, wow, I'm a 40-year-old man, and then thinking about, I'm 50, but thinking as if I was a 40-year-old person, and realizing, oh, my dad was only 30 when he had me, and he was like younger, and I'm struggling hard. Like when we think our parents are like just can do it all, and we put them on this pedestal, and then recognizing that they were people too, doing the parenting thing for the first time with their own list of struggles and baggage and trauma and all that kind of stuff. A lot of times seeing that perspective of like, whereas always blaming them for not doing things the way you wish they had been done, and saying like, wow, they were really trying to do their best, and recognize that from a deep, primordial place.
Right.
That's a different perspective, and it can be for anything.
So I should mention that our mothers are watching this right now. So
are they though?
Be careful.
I mean, hopefully, but
No. So everything you said, 100%, Mom.
But you think about, and I have thought about like situations where my family, my parents did their best, but I guess I never really thought of it like with the grace I've given myself, like, oh, I've never done this before. Well, they had never done it before either. So yeah, when you put it in that perspective, I'm like, okay,
right.
Maybe, things are different than I thought.
And that's the thing, right? When people think about expanded states, ayahuasca, psilocybin, all the kind of things, you think about it's a drug, right? It's something that makes your mind think in a different way. And because of all the stuff that's happened in the 60s and 70s, I got a bad rap. But there are, to Michael's point, there are a lot of studies right now. We talked to Jonathan Robinson, who talked about MDMA, that helped PTSD tremendously.
Yeah.
But I loved the fact that you called out so many other things other than just ayahuasca, psilocybin, MDMA, and LSD. You actually talked about breath work. You talked about dancing. I mean, it is like any kind of shamans, right? Native Americans use drum circles and dancing to get themselves in a different mindset. So I love that we're expanding the conversation. This is not just about ayahuasca and drugs. It's actually about finding a way to alter your state of thinking so that you can allow alternate methodologies to come in. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, alternate perspectives is how I like to phrase it.
That's great. So when you're doing, when you're dancing or, listening to the trance music, how do you, and can you get in this state? And then when you really want to start thinking about things later, like once that music's gone, how do you stay in that state so that you can really kind of think about these things that you need to work on?
That's when you use mushrooms.
Well, because I understand, because that stuff's still in your system, but once the music's gone, it's hard to like keep, in that flow.
Right. Well, with all expanded states, the reason they're, expanded and why they're not part of regular reality is because if you were in an expanded state all the time, you really couldn't function.
Well, that's
right.
true.
Like think of the concept of ego loss or ego death. It's a very powerful experience. But without your ego, you wouldn't know where to put the spoon to your mouth, at least at the most like basic level. You need to know who you are to interact with the world at some fundamental level, just to eat, just to like go about your day. So the important thing, I think, when we're going into any expanded state is to start off with an intention. Just say like, what am I? And then let that intention go and let whatever, your divine guide or whatever, believe is that source that's behind the window of all the defenses and stuff to give you the answers that you're looking for so that you can live a better life. But the idea is you don't want to be in an expanded state all the time. You want to use it very judiciously, very consciously, and with at least directed towards some sort of purpose or intention or aspiration.
Right. So it's less about being in the expanded state all the time and rather learning the lessons that you learned when you were in the expanded state and bringing that into your regular life. That's how
Absolutely.
I see it.
And that's what guides and in this work they call integration. I kind of think you go in to get the downloads, the information, and then the ceremony starts actually when the ceremony's over. Like there's a lot of ceremony junkies that go do ayahuasca every, 3 times a month or something like that. And they come with the same problems and they get the same messages. And they're like, oh, the solution is to do more ayahuasca. And I'm totally like, that's fine for them. But I don't think that that's how we want to be living our life. What we want to be living our life is learn how to be better people, look at things from a different perspective. Don't be so entrenched in your own perspective, and then implement those downloads into your life so that you can implement them and live a more satisfying life.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
So a very, very basic question. I have zero experience with ayahuasca or psilocybin or any of that.
Sure.
We drink, and I
What?
know that you can, I
Water,
know
right?
that
You drink
when you drink a lot, you can forget. So do you not ever, do you remember everything when you're using these other,
Substances?
Yes. Thank you.
Absolutely not. And that's one of the many benefits of sitting with a guide rather than doing this on your own is because you do forget a lot of the entire experience that's fundamental to every experience in life. I mean, if I told you to recount your day today, you would forget a whole bunch of stuff. So just like those things, just these experiences just happen to be more profound. But I think the key takeaways in general, people will hold on to them and will say like, oh, I really got to make amends with this person. I really have to stop drinking, or I really have to, cut down on my marijuana use or whatever. I have to talk to my partner about this, that, or the other thing to reconcile the situation that we've been struggling with, or whatever these things are. So those main takeaways will come. But with the help of a guide, the guide can help you, kind of, not, the guide shouldn't be directing the experience, but they should be sort of holding the container for the experience, writing down notes. I always tell people, like, if there's anything that you want me to write down that's important, just say, can you write this down? It doesn't even have to be the full thing, but just a memory trigger so that they can come back to what it was that they were thinking at the time. Right. And then there's other strategies you can use. For example, you can record a session and transcribe it, which is a technology that I'm kind of at the forefront of. Oh. And there's all kinds of things you can do. But you're absolutely right. You're not going to remember everything. There's more. If there's more actual experience, moment to moment, and some of these more intense expanded states than your experience right now. That's one of the things that kind of changed my whole metaphysics, is the recognition of how much more there is than what we're experiencing in moment to moment basis usually.
Right.
That makes sense.
It totally does. Actually, my first experience with anything that's mind altering or expanding state expansion was the Carlos Castaneda books, right? He did a lot. He talked a lot about those types of things. He used that medicine to help him expand and to learn with Don Jose and all that kind of stuff. And when my mother had those books and I first stumbled on them, she was like panicked. Oh my God, you can't read those. You're too young. You're not ready for that kind of thing. So of course, the first thing I did as soon as I got old enough was I bought all the entire thing and read the whole series.
No, you snuck and read them right after she told you not to.
Did I mention my mom was watching?
Oh, never mind. I was kidding.
But that was my first intro into anything expanded states, and then after that was the movie with William Hurt, Altered States, which freaked the living crap out of me. And that was just sensory deprivation chamber, right? Mm-hmm. That caused all that kind of thing. So, when you're talking about mind expansion or state expansion, is probably a better way of saying it. There's two camps, right? There's a camp that uses it strictly for spiritual enlightenment and things like that. There's another camp that uses it for mental health, PTSD and all that kind of stuff. And I know that you do a lot of work with that as well. I think you do a little bit of both, which is why this question is so important to me. There are people out there who believe that utilizing these types of substances or these types of, whether it's breath work or whatever it is, or expanded states, is kind of a crutch to reach that enlightenment or whatever they're looking for. What do you say to people that feel that way? Do you feel that way?
I think you could say the same thing about meditation as a crutch. I could do nothing or I could do something, right? I could do nothing, I could do something. If I do anything aside from my regular way of being, then it's a crutch. This is just a faster way to have an experience that might take 30 years on, deep entrenched meditation retreats, Vipassana retreats, darkness retreats, right. All of those things. Let me just tell you real quickly, because you mentioned, trauma, PTSD, and then also spirituality. The way I like to work is the first stage is called empty the vessel. And they're not orthogonal necessarily, but usually we can't get to those spiritual states really until we've done the interior healing and the recognition of the traumas that we've had, the triggers we have, basically bringing us closer, towards as high a level of self-awareness as we can actually potentially even have. Mm. And that's emptying the vessel. It's like the first step, and kind of like how I think about these things is recognizing these factors in life, whether it be past or present or people outside that cause you to react rather than respond in life, right? Work through those things. And then once the vessel is empty, I like to find out who you really are. That's where you get into the more spirituality thing. I think when people jump into the whole spirituality thing without emptying the vessel and taking charge of what is no longer serving them, like egoic mechanisms that came up through childhood and through life that are no longer adequate strategies for living a life, and they just go straight to the spirituality you have. That's basically what they call spiritual bypassing. Right. So I think it's very important to recognize that all of these things are possible with these things. And if it works for somebody and the other thing is, like, if it's working for people and giving them greater peace, greater equanimity, getting them more in touch with their interior selves and making them better people to other people, having them filled with more gratitude, more compassion for others, and just being more satisfied with life. Who cares if it's a crutch or not? It works. Like, it'd be like, oh, you could suck it up and your leg is broken, but we're not going to give you Advil, you wimp, because that's a crutch. You should just be able to suck it up. And I think where it becomes a crutch is when people are going to whatever sort of modality. And it doesn't just have to be psychedelics or expanded states, but just go for whatever modality just to say that they're doing something, or because they're enthralled by the modality itself.
Sure.
And that's where it could become a problem. But it's these, especially like psilocybin, absolutely not addictive. And, those people are not racing every day to have a psilocybin journey.
Right. And I know I put you on the spot, so I apologize, Michael, but that was a perfect answer. And it has nothing to do with the fact that I actually do have a broken leg right now. And I'm using crutches. So.
And taking the
Tylenol.
Gosh, I just had a question and that threw me thinking about the crutches. I remember. So it has what to do with what you're talking about, because you mentioned it, but you mentioned something I'd never heard of before. I'm kind of like a pit bull. I'm like clomp, and I can't let go until I know what it is. You said something about a darkness retreat. That sounds a little freaky to me. So what is that?
It's a retreat that's in darkness.
Yeah. So it's they've become pretty they're becoming more popular. So they're basically you go in total isolation. They have a very basic room, no media, no books, no music, nothing but yourself. And then it's pitch, like cave darkness for 4 days. There's like an airlock kind of situation where they'll slide the food in there so that you eat, but you're in perfect darkness.
Like a little porta potty?
Yeah, there's a bathroom, like what you need for your toothbrush and stuff. And I have not done it yet, but it's something that's intriguing.
And you come out like a Morlock.
No, that sounds a lot better than what I was thinking. Is like darkness, like I'm thinking like spiritual darkness and demons. I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to do that for a weekend.
To Michael's point, before you do anything like this, you have to do your own shadow work. So there is some shadow work that goes along with these shadow retreats, right? Yes.
Well, that was actually the darkness situation. Like you talk about people going into a cave, you always think, oh, the guru went to the cave for 30 days. Like, oftentimes that was in total darkness, because what happens, I don't know what the physiological reasons for this is, but after a certain amount of time, it's a full-blown, this is my understanding, you get a full-blown expanded state experience, as powerful or nearly as powerful as using one of these exogenous substances.
I could imagine it'd be a full-blown psychotic experience. I mean, I'm hoping the walls will be kind of padded up or something.
I mean, you've heard about like people being tortured that way, like putting in a little cell where there's no light and you're totally by yourself. And I mean, not even that. I don't know.
Well, don't do it to anybody without their consent.
That's true. All right, kid. Right. You're bugging me.
There you go.
Make sure that you sign a release before you actually come into this cave.
But I think you would just break down and just.
Well,
that's the point, right? Yeah, that's
all of these things are at its most like, in some ways, people are really ego resistant. They have these structures. Sometimes there is a point of breaking down where the ego structure can't hold on anymore, and they get past it. And then they work past it, and they realize why it was there in the first place. And then they're like, oh, realize it's no longer serving them. And then sometimes it's as quick as that. There's a lot of people who, just recognize how some behaviors are not working out in their life, and they just will never take, some substance that they're abusing for the rest of their life after one of these experiences. It's been known to happen. And it's usually not a painless process, but there's no growth without pain usually.
Right. Yep. Wow. And that's where I was going to take it, because for those of you who are watching or listening to this, this is not it's become a real fad, right? The ayahuasca trip is like a big thing now in spiritual circles, and I got to do this. And people come out of there sometimes really traumatized in large extent. To your point, they have maybe not have done their shadow work before they got out there, and they see things that really scare them or something along those lines. And this is not an easy fix. This is not like you take a pill and you're good. There is a lot of work that goes along with it, including and especially the fact that you are emptying yourself and facing the parts of yourself that need the most help. So it is not an easy little fun weekend trip. This is work that you're putting into this.
And I would say to that point also that I don't have a good number to say it. I mean, a good number, like a specific empirical value to give you, but most of the time that people go to like an ayahuasca retreat and come back traumatized is because they went to a place that didn't know what they were doing. Like, quite honestly, there's places there's a lot of places that are just like, oh, let the medicine do its healing magic and whatnot. And it's like,
in that voice too, right?
Yeah. And they don't have a support. The retreat center doesn't have a support structure. They don't have knowledgeable retreat facilitators who know how to work with people in both during and after the experience, right? And they're kind of most retreats. I'm going to say 75% of retreats, basically, like there's one in Florida. It's quite well known. They let you, you have your experience and you're sitting in a hammock for the days that you're not. There's not a lot. There's a little bit of interaction, but it's not like a real thoughtful approach towards integration. And in the actual experiences themselves, they'll just let you go through it without, like at Heart Sanctuary, the one that I co-founded in Peru. Like, we have a process. Someone's having a hard time. They say help. Only one of the facilitators will, check in on them. If they need to go outside for some air and have a conversation and a change of place, they're not going to be just left in the dark room to like work out their demons. Right. So I think like we've never had anybody say anything but like this was the best experience of our life. And I think it's because we're not of the just let the medicine do what the medicine does sort of thing. And the people we have working down there are super high integrity. And I could say that for a lot of other places, but it's not the case. It's not the case that 100% of ayahuasca retreat centers and ayahuasca facilitators really know what they're doing.
Right.
So there's different levels. There's ones that are medicalized where they have a team of doctors and psychologists for like, for like heavy duty, issues that people are struggling with, like, let's say heroin or meth addiction and stuff like that. There's levels of trauma and life anguish or whatever that, we would refer somebody to a different retreat center because we're kind of like, the 75% of trauma,
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. So as with everything and anything, you have to have discernment. You have to know, Absolutely. You have to go to the reputable places. You have to know, do your homework and find a place that makes the most sense for you, because not everyone is on the same path. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And some people are shopping on price. Oh, I got an ayahuasca retreat for $300 for 5 days. Like, why are you guys charging this much money? It's like, well,
because you won't die.
I went to the fast food chain and they only charged me $9. Why can't I go to French Laundry? Why is the French Laundry so much more expensive? It's not a perfect analogy, but that's what I mean. Sometimes you get what you pay for. You have to expect to pay a minimum amount to have somebody who cares enough and is qualified enough to like offer the support that people need.
And that's the key. That's qualified enough. Because anyone I can, hey, I got a shingle. I'm an ayahuasca integration coach now.
Oh, absolutely.
I have no idea how to
all over the place.
Yeah.
So how does this work like legally? I mean, is that like, I have no idea about this stuff. Is ayahuasca legal? Like, is it like?
It's not legal in the United States, and it's technically not legal in Peru either, unless you are somebody who has like a special certificate. Somebody that I'm connected with down there actually has a certificate from the Ministry of Culture as a keeper of the medicine, like to like showing that they know the indigenous ways. They're indigenous Shipibo, and that they actually are like vetted to like be like an authority on that way of serving the medicine. And it also has from the Ministry of Tourism that also vetted this man. And so it's decriminalized, but they also, Peruvian government, it's like marijuana was in the Netherlands, 10 years ago, decriminalized, but you go to any coffee shop in Amsterdam, you could get as much marijuana as you like. That's a legal status. The last time I checked in Peru. In the United States, the ayahuasca vine compound, which is the harmine and harmaline alkaloids that come out of there, those are legal in the United States. What's not legal is the secondary component of ayahuasca, which is the chacruna or the NN-DMT component.
Gotcha.
Which is the part that's more responsible for like the visionary state part of it.
Right.
But they both have visionary components and, opening components to them, both plants. Sorry.
Okay. So I'm glad that you mentioned the indigenous, because there has been some reports of late that the indigenous peoples in some of those places are really not happy with what is happening now with the ayahuasca resort industry, because there is, I mean, it is a very sacred medicine that they've used for so many years, and for someone to come up with and put up a hammock and do, drink some ayahuasca and hang out in a hammock. It's not really what it's about, right? So the fact that you're working with indigenous peoples to help bring this to the folks that actually truly want to use it for the right reasons, I applaud you for that. So thank you for.
Yeah. So I'll speak a little bit more of that, just to be clear, make sure I'm not misrepresenting it. The quote unquote shaman, and I don't like to use the word shaman for a lengthier conversation, but the person who serves the medicine was trained by Shipibo, and has been vetted. They've said, you're good to go. But he is not Shipibo. He's from Chile. And so, part of, in our business plan, we have, as soon as we actually, because we've only been doing, COVID stopped the retreat center I was affiliated with before, and we've rebooted the place that we're going to try and make it even more in alignment with exactly what myself and the other two co-creators that started this would have envisioned for our experiences. And so, there's a plan for us to actually contribute some to some of the indigenous down there, because we don't want to just hold on to that. And what we do is we do have a large component of our curriculum at the retreat is teaching about the Andean cosmovision. So explaining there's a lot of workshops that we do in there that actually put some cultural context to what the experience is, where the experience comes from, with trying our best not to appropriate it, because in full recognition that, we didn't come up with these technologies. And
Right. Okay. Well, that's, I mean, it sounds like you're going about it all the right ways. So
trying to.
Yeah.
How long does it take? When you start the ceremony, how long is the process?
In fact, even more than that, what can someone expect when they go in for a ceremony with you? What can someone expect, and then how long does it take?
Okay, sure. So just to be clear, I do not serve it. I'm there as I and the team of people who are working there that are on site 24 hours a day during the entire retreat. The 3 or 4 of us that are there in that capacity do not serve. We sit and we drink in the Maloka of the temple, right? But we don't serve it ourselves. The person who serves it is Nacho, and his team. He brings an additional 3 to 5 people in there, and he is primarily responsible for how he runs the ceremony. So what do you expect? You're going to expect a talk at the beginning about what the boundaries are, what the situations is what you can and cannot do. Because we don't, during the ceremony, for example, participants are not to interact with other participants. Someone might be having an experience and someone is having a different experience, and someone's working through something, and then their next door neighbor says, "Hey, I just had this crazy experience," and brings them out of it. Right. So there's 2 tiers of support. First, Nacho's team, and then secondary, myself and the other people who would be there on a 24-hour basis at the retreat center itself, doing the workshops and such. So you get a primer on what the rules are of engagement there, and we are very strict about those rules because we don't want anybody to. We want a best experience for everybody, and you have to set those boundaries. And then, basically, in the procedure that we have, everybody goes up, they sit, and they will take the first cup of the brew. It's pretty bitter. It's not pleasant tasting. It tastes a little bit like acrid prune juice, I would say. Ooh. And then there's then you go back to your mat, and you're encouraged to sit up, but you can lay down if you like. And and during this part, when everybody has drunk and sit together, it's quiet, so there's no sound. As soon as the medicine starts to come up, as determined by Nacho, or this is pretty much the standard sort of protocol for most ceremonies. As soon as the medicine starts coming up, he will start to sing. And Nacho In our case, Nacho plays like, I don't know, 20 or 30 instruments, and his whole team plays instruments. So it's quite an experience. I've sat with 9 different, people who serve, whatever you want to call it. I don't like to use the word shaman. So I've sat with, but I'll use it right now. I've sat with 9 different shamans, and 3 of them super, super, super high quality. But in terms of like the beauty of the ceremony, have not seen or heard anybody who even compares to like the music and the fun that happens throughout, and the technical prowess of like the engagement with the medicine itself and music as medicine.
That's cool. Now you know that those 9 shaman that you work with are not thinking, "Is it me? I'm one of the 3 mushrooms. You're one of the 3. Are you one of the 3?"
They're all thinking, I'm one of the 3, so they're happy.
Sorry,
someone will know that they're not one of the 3. Then basically what happens is you start feeling a little bit, out of time and place. Like you might see like explosions of colors with your eyes open or closed. There's thoughts and like sometimes great awarenesses that just come up, just come up. It's hard to say because it's different for everybody, but generally there's a kind of a light show part about 2 hours after the beginning. The light show diminishes, and from in my experience, most people say like most of the downloads and realizations come in that second 2-hour period. They can come at the first part as well, but the first part is more intense, more disorienting. And then the other thing that people ask a lot about is the la purga, or the purge, which is
the vomiting.
Not the vomiting. Yeah, it's crazy because we have that one word for it is vomiting. And when before I got invested in this work and working with ayahuasca and such, I imagined being drunk at a party and having had too much to drink, or being sick from some virus or some bacteria, and then throwing up with nausea and all that kind of stuff. And not to say there couldn't be nausea, anything is up for grabs, but typically it's something else that is coming up in an energetic way that seems, it just seems like there's like an association with something. So the best way I can explain what this is like is to give you an example.
Okay.
If you're cool with that.
Absolutely.
So I was doing a ceremony, I don't know, at some point in time as a participant. And it was during the time of all those school shootings. I don't know if you remember, it was probably like before COVID, like 6 years ago. There was like every week for like a 2-month period. There was
how we forget.
Yeah. But it was like, just like bam, 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 like every week.
Yeah.
And as a person who has no power to make any or a solution for that, I had unknowingly been harboring this deep sadness about hearing about these children and their families and all this kind of stuff. And it was just kind of like hearing it and kind of like not really knowing how to, like, what to do with it. Right. But just hearing it and hearing it, and hearing it. And so my purge that night was basically a real realization, that I wasn't doing a good job of defending against the sadness that was coming into me. I was just not recognizing it. So the sadness was coming in, and I wasn't dealing with it or recognizing it or giving it its proper attention. And then all of a sudden, once I like fully realized this, I felt like this tingling sensation coming in from all sides, and then all of a sudden, blah, right into the bucket. And it was like, whew. And the experience, it was of purging out sadness, all the sadness connected to all that. And I felt light after that. Was like, whew, didn't even know that was in there. Pay attention, Mike, because when the news gets, hairy like that, notice if you're feeling that sadness, it is affecting you or not. So there was the awareness of how I might process future news events. And there was also the recognition and the release of the sadness that I'd been holding. Right. Does that make sense? The other thing is, the purge itself does not look like normal food vomit. So you can imagine 30 people. That's one of the questions that I've asked a bunch of people. No one's been able to give me the answer. It's like, why doesn't it smell in there like a bunch of people vomiting? Because it does not.
It doesn't.
No, it does not. And I've asked a couple, and they're like, I don't really know. That's that's just the way it is. So it does not smell at all like a whole bunch of people vomiting. So what comes up also doesn't look like vomit. It's usually like black and sticky, like more. It's kind of a weird thing. I don't. It's there's not a lot of people I've not heard of anybody studying the component processes of the components of the ayahuasca purge, but it's just not the same thing.
Yeah, I can only imagine people not wanting to study the purge vomit stuff. So I mean, you make it sound so much better, right? Because you hear about it all the time. In fact, we know someone that went to a retreat, and she spent the entire time purging. It was a terrible experience for her because she did the entire time was purging. And then I think it was the second time she went. But anyway, it just sounds terrible. And you think, right, to yourself, when you mentioned when you were drinking, right? When you're drinking, you are poisoning yourself. So your body is like blah, and expelling all the poison. So in a way I see it, the way I heard it just now, is you're expelling the poison inside of your soul. And that, when you think of it that way, that's a beautiful way of thinking about it. I'm not sure if I want to do it still, but it sounds way better than vomiting up what you just ate the day before.
It does.
So how aware are you during all of this? Because so I saw the movie The Doors. Mm-hmm. Maybe that might have been peyote. I don't know, but he was like, woo, out of it. But you're telling me that you can know not to talk to your neighbor and know to grab the bucket. You're not just like a hot mess going through all this, because that's what I imagine. I just, the way people described it to us makes it sound like you're just out of it.
Well, there's different degrees. Like I've done it a lot of times, enough times. People who have done it, there's a way of finding yourself in the space, in that, expanded state where you can, that's how, Nacho, he drinks like 150 times a year, right? Because he's running all these retreats and diet and dietas and all this kind of stuff. And he's playing literally, I've seen him play, a flute with one hand, sing, go back and forth from the flute, and playing tablas with the other hand, and shaking a tambourine with his foot simultaneously. And, between he and I know that he actually drinks more than the participants, but he's just used to be able to operate in that space. So it's like if in anything, as you do it more, you're just more attentive to what's going on, and able to experience it. I have a challenge out there for like real people who would consider themselves ayahuasca connoisseurs, and it's only for them. I have because I'm part of this guide network, this guild of guides, and I said if anybody wants to go down there and to check it out, because I'm looking for them to refer clients to that retreat center. I said, you go down there, and if it's not in the top 5% of your experiences, I'll give you your money back, like straight up. Because I know it will be. And the reason I can only tell that to people who have a lot of experiences is because someone who's gone for the first time doesn't know what even is going on, and they're kind of lost in the sauce, and they don't realize what is actually going on. But someone who's comfortable in the medicine space, they can see like, oh, I know what's going on. I understand what the facilitators and what the shaman are doing, and like, damn, this is like next level. So that's my challenge to the green grow connoisseurs of the world, the
sommeliers of the ayahuasca world,
self-proclaimed sommeliers,
right? The like what foodies, the ayahuascoodies.
Well, cool. I mean, it sounds like an incredible place.
But it also sounds like you don't want to be in a room when it's all first timers.
Yeah, right. People handle themselves quite well, because you're not going to be walking around. You're on a mat, right? You're comfortable, and there's a lot of people, at least at our place, there's a lot of people looking out for you, and you can always remember to say help and someone will attend to you within 30 seconds. Someone will be at your side to sometimes it's like help, and they come up, what's the matter? It says, I can't find my water bottle. Oh, okay, well, here's your water bottle. Sometimes, so it's not as of course. Yeah, it's not as you're not as lost in the sauce as you might think. Okay, and it also, ayahuasca in particular, comes in and out. Like it'll come up super intense, and it drops down a little bit, and then it comes up and down. It's kind of got this, they call it like a snake pattern of a snake going up and down. So that's just metaphorically.
Okay. Right. So you've got some self-awareness.
All right. So how long does the full trip take?
Yeah, it's the peak hits from you drink at T equals 0. Right? At T equals 30 to 45 minutes into it. So you start to feel the effects. About an hour to an hour and 15 minutes later is the peak. And then it kind of comes down in kind of a wavy pattern until it's complete at, by 4 hours, you're pretty much done. In 5 hours, almost everybody's done. If people have chosen to drink more cups, they might go into the 6 hour mark. But because you can, throughout the ceremony, you have the opportunity to drink more. Like he will open the window and say, does anybody want some more? And you go up there and they'll give you another cup, 2, 3, all you can drink.
Wow. And all you can drink ayahuasca buffet.
You got it.
Yeah, I'm a one-hit wonder. I would take like a sip of the cup and I'm good. I think I'd be like tripping for 5 hours. Just that one little thing. I don't think.
Are you sensitive to other medications like anesthesia and stuff?
Very much so. Yeah, very much so.
So that would be something that we would or Nacho would consider because we have an intake form. It's like people say like, oh, I'm very sensitive to stuff. The first night is the opening. It's a smaller amount for everybody, and then so you can get your bearings, and then if you want more, you can drink 5 cups if you want the first night. But the first start to see how everybody does, if they're first timers, a little bit less, and you'll be surprised. A lot of people will come up for a second, third cup on the first night who have never done it before. Because they're enjoying the experience and they're feeling so much profound healing.
Do you purge every time, even just like a little bit? What the first day?
I would say for me personally, it's about 75% of the time.
Wow,
purge. And
they
say the purge is other things too. It could be crying, it could be sweating, it could be shaking. That's very common. Is people shaking out trauma, and that's related to our, I believe it's related to our evolutionary patterns of how we would release trauma in the wild, and we've kind of lost that capacity, but the body naturally can do that and can find its way to that trauma releasing mechanism in this expanded state.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you, is there too much? Can you overdo it? I know you guys wouldn't let someone, but if someone's taken, could someone cups. Theoretically, just drink too much of it?
Well, I'm like anything, you could overdo it, I suppose, but nowhere in the realm of, at some point in time, you're just going to be so lost in the sauce, you can't have any more. But I can speak to mushrooms or psilocybin. There's been no LD50 or lethal dose 50% found for psilocybin. So you could take, and same thing with LSD. There's studies, people taking 1,000 hits of acid, they're gone at the emergency room, but they come back and they're, no physical ramifications.
Good God. I can't even imagine 2 tabs of acid and imagine 1,000. Oh my God.
One.
Well,
there was a case, I think in San Francisco where, LSD is served at, I think it's the millionth of a dose or something. Anyway, they screwed up what they were putting in so that, people thought they were taking 1 dose, they were actually taking 1,000. And so there was a group of people that ended up in the emergency room. All of them had no physical effects, but they were obviously incapacitated completely. Right. But what's interesting in that story, you could look it up based on those keywords that you could search that I just gave. You could, some of them had traumas and they were healed afterwards. So we don't know what happened to those people. They don't really, from the articles I read about this, didn't really keep great records, but they followed up with these people. And even though they were lost in the sauce for 3-4 days because they had taken so much LSD, right. When they came back, months later, they were actually had lost a bunch of, challenges that they had been facing. Yeah, some baggages got lost in the trip.
Wow. Yeah. They got put on a different plane.
That kind of luggage, I'm ready to let go of.
Right. So as you take more cups, does it just make the experience longer, or does it make it more intense, or both?
Well, the time is a factor here. So if you take 4 cups, it will be extended by a little bit. That's my understanding. It would extend a little bit, but not so much more. It's still that peak. But if you're taking a cup now and a cup later and a cup now, a cup an hour from now, and a cup an hour from now, it's going to also extend the duration. Sure. Probably keep the peak going for a little bit longer. So that's what I would predict anyway.
Okay. All right. So then to piggyback off of that kind of question, when you see, you've got people there that help you if you need help. You yell at your help, and someone. If I am having a really bad experience, I don't want to say trip because it's irrespective.
Sure. Having an intense experience, yeah.
Yes. If I say help because I'm really I'm losing my mind because I'm so lost in sauce. What can you do to help? I mean, is there anything that people can do to help you like come down off a bad experience?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, absolutely. There's a whole bunch of stuff to do, and that's why these things should not be ever taken by yourself, especially if you don't have experience with them. But it could be as simple as like, holding the person's hand that tethers them to like, oh, I'm not actually dead, right? Or whatever they're going through, tethers them back and actually distracts them from what was going on before. Taking them out of the setting. So, all right, I'm helping them out to the outdoors, which is right outside the temple, for example, there. So they get the fresh air and all of a sudden they can ground themselves and like, oh, okay. It's just a matter of interrupting the cycle of thinking or experience that was happening at that. It's as simple as that. If it's on a one-on-one session with psilocybin, for example, you could just tell them, okay, I want you to breathe a certain way. And then there's certain breath patternings that you could do with like a longer exhale, and just distracting them and telling them to think about their breath, put their attention on the breath could be enough to interrupt the cycle. Okay. So I think there's a misunderstanding that people will have a bad or an intense experience or what you're calling a bad trip, whatnot, and that you're unable to extract yourself from that. But in my experience, you're with, proper people who know what they're doing. It's like nearly 100. I mean, I've never seen him not be able to extract somebody out of something where they're asking for help with. But oftentimes at the same time, those challenging experiences are the experiences that you actually need to go through in order to do the healing. So it's best not to intervene, unless the person's actually asking for help. Sure. And intervene minimally so that, enough, but minimally. So that they can get what they need from that.
Right. Yeah.
Now, are there any sort of prolonged side effects like flashbacks or anything like that?
No, as far as I know, the only psychedelic that I've heard of that actually has like legit flashbacks is the 5-MeO-DMT, which is the toad. Toad.
Yeah. Toad looking.
That's known to like regularly. If you do that, they will tell you to expect flashbacks. But the flashbacks aren't like full blown, loss. They're just a little bit of a sensation of an opening feeling. They're not. That's my understanding. I'm not really well versed in 5-MeO-DMT.
Okay, well then let's dive into the more of the scientific. We talked about the experience and all kind of stuff, and I do want to know a little bit about how you got into this. But how does this help? I mean, I assume it rewires the brain some way so that when you get out of it, because I know that you use this to help with mental health challenges, PTSD, that kind of stuff. And we had the amazing Jonathan Robinson on a while back to talk about MDMA that they're testing right now for PTSD specifically, for example. But how does that work? How does taking ayahuasca, psilocybin, MDMA, anything like that, how does it change someone? Because we've heard it happens after even sometimes one dose or one experience.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It can happen after once, and it can happen after one dose or one experience, I should say. And it's also important to say that that's not always the case either. Sometimes if you have to implement what you commit to after one of these sessions, the integration part. How does it work? That's a tricky question. I mean, the indigenous will tell you a completely different mechanism of action than somebody from Johns Hopkins, for example. And how it actually works is, I don't think people totally know. I mean, there's some stabs in the dark at how it actually might work, but I think it has to do, I mean, you're asking what I think. So I can't tell you if this is right or wrong, but if you just think about the known neuroplasticity and neurogenesis that happens after these things. So there's all kinds of new neural connections that happen, and just know that that's happening, right? So that does happen. That's been known and studied across most of these, definitely across the ayahuasca and the psilocybin and LSD. So knowing that, and then using the analogy that's used in Michael Pollan's book about the ski slope, right? So do you know that analogy? Have you heard of it before? Well, I'll tell it for the audience because not everybody will know. So if you've skied before, like you go in the mountain, so we're going to say like when you're a child, the whole mountain is, you get the freshies. There's nobody skied on the mountain before yet on that day. They've groomed it. It's all nice. You can go anywhere you want, right? Because there's no tracks to pull your skis in a certain direction.
Right.
Over life and through trauma and whatever happens through the experience of living this life, the mountain, now thinking about going further into the ski day, tracks start happening in the mountain, and like all these people have been skiing the same trail. All of a sudden it's harder to get out of that rut. So you're thinking about the same thing, and that's leading to the same behaviors and the same emotions because you're kind of in this rut, which is like a ski track. And so what happens oftentimes with these medicines, whether it's a function of the medicine itself or it's the function of grooming that mountain again, making all these tracks smooth for a bit and having the shift in perspective so that you're looking at the same problem from a different sort of frame of reference. And together, those two things allow you to make new tracks in a more directed towards a better way of a new way of being in the world. So make new tracks.
I love that analogy. That makes so much perfect sense.
It does.
It's a great way of looking at it. I really love it.
Mm-hmm. And then also when you're over your skis, that makes more sense too.
Right. So then what, you have some experience, you have quite a bit of experience in this. What kind of things have you seen it help with?
Ayahuasca in particular, or just psychedelics in general. We'll stick with what I've seen is, I've seen from physical things. Like I'll give you one example for the physical. It's just a super small, seems kind of not that important example, but it's true. It's my experience, and I wasn't expecting this. So I used to be prone to, when I get stressed out, what are those fever blisters, those gnarly like canker sores or whatever that's on your mouth, on your lip. And I used to get them about once or sometimes twice a month if I was dealing with some stressful stuff at work, right? And I didn't come in. This was not an intention for me at all. I just thought that this was my life. This was just part of living, and other people get them. And, 90% of the people have that oral thing. And during my first session, I heard a voice saying, "This is going to hurt." And what I experienced was, because I had one at the time on my first, because I was nervous traveling by myself and all this kind of stuff. So I actually had one of those fever blisters, and it felt like someone was putting a Bic lighter up to my lip for about 2 minutes.
God.
2 minutes. And that was 10 years ago. And in that time, I've only had 2 in the last 10 years.
Wow.
So that's an example of one,
Right.
Of a physical one. I have more examples of physical healings. People have healed, greater things, but I think it's important to, talk to your doctor and all that kind of stuff.
Of course.
This isn't the thing. But I know that some physical healings can happen. And then just a lot of self-awareness of like how you've been operating in the world in ways that are not sustainable and not real for having a good life. I'll give you another example for myself because it's the easiest to conjure up since they're the ones that I've thought about. I realized when I first went to Peru, one of these days I recognized that there was like some kind of shame inside this person, inside Michael Tierno, right? That I wasn't quite aware of in a surface way day to day, but it was there all the time anyway, operating. I don't know, from a child, I didn't even know what it was from. And I did the kind of a mental arithmetic of figuring out that there didn't seem to be any basis for carrying around this shame, and I let it go. And I also made the connection of like that this shame was tied in some way to drinking too much at parties and whatnot, like using using the alcohol to overcome this internalized shame that I was experiencing on like a base rate and not aware of. And then I stopped drinking for like 3 years, like just not a single craving. That actually happens a lot. People giving up habits, either stopping completely or decreasing a lot. Other things like if your partner may be at odds, you might have like not such a great relationship sometimes. And then you realize maybe your contribution to that thing, you can come back and say, well, I just had this change of reference and I kind of understand what you've been yelling at me for the last 5 years or whatever. I'm just making things up now.
Right.
The classic thing for PTSD is separating out the chain of events that happened during a PTSD episode where they feel like they're actually re-experiencing the event. Firecrackers go off and someone can't help but just immediately shift into that zone. Is the capacity for the human being to sort of separate those different components and like realize that they are no longer in the situation where the reaction is the required reaction to a loud noise, for example. And over time, they can make, using the ski slope analogy, they can release those sort of connections so that people can then, all right, I'm not at war, or I'm not being yelled at by my parents, or whatever these things are that can lead to PTSD. So that's just a small subset of a huge, those are just a few examples.
Right.
Well, I like even more now that ski slope analogy, because you think about, you can go to counseling and they could say, well, this and this, but unless you kind of regroom or, change your way, have that physical change of your way of thinking, it's up to you to decide whether you're going to implement it or not. And that can be really hard to do. So I guess it would help with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So if someone wanted to, they're convinced, they've listened to this now for the last hour, and they're convinced they want to experience it for themselves. First and foremost, they've worked on themselves. They've worked, they've done their shadow work. Now they feel that they're ready to go. How does someone discern? How does someone decide who they go and do these ceremonies with? What's the best way to pick somebody?
All right. So first, let me just tell you what the biggest problem is that don't go to friends and family necessarily.
Right.
You hear necessarily, right?
Well, the first
kind of tricky, right? Because most people have only experience with one person. So they've gone to one place and they have an experience. It's, 90% of the time it's going to be powerful and life-changing, right? So you go to this one person, they have experience with one shaman, let's say, and they think that this is the guy, right? And they tell everybody that this is the guy. So I think one of the things is to do a little bit more investigation as to what, like in terms of an ayahuasca retreat place, like what is their kind of like, look at what they're offering besides the medicine, look at what their approach is in terms of how they serve it, like what their philosophy is, look at what their approach to safety protocols is. Do they have one? How much what is their, how do they handle difficult situations? Like if someone is having an intense experience, if their approach is to just let the medicine do the work and let them writhe around as long as they want under the assumption that they're getting what they need, right? That would be a place that I would definitely just cross off my list right away. And that's actually now that I'm thinking about it, that's actually what I would ask your friend that went to an ayahuasca experience and he only has that one. Ask him, well, how did they this would be the question I asked, and I just came up with it right now. How do they take care of people who are having a hard time? And what are the rules of engagement in the ceremony? And what other sort of integration activities do they offer besides the actual ceremonies? Those would be the three questions. And if they say, well, they actually have a really good protocol that if someone needs help, they have an identified protocol to engage with people who are having a hard time. That's a huge green flag. Okay, they know what they're doing and they're not just going to quote unquote let the medicine do the work. Right. If they're giving you integration activities more so than just a group integration where everybody just has to sit and discuss, but if they're giving you activities on the off days where that are targeted towards the ceremonies, or that's another green flag. Okay. And if they have they can speak to a safety protocol. What would happen if somebody had a heart attack, irrespective if there's medicine? Like what? How do they know like how close is the nearest hospital, right, or the nearest medical facility? Sure. Right. Just that they know means that they're aware that this is a possibility, not because of the psychedelics itself, but shit happens,
Sure.
And,
right.
And, it could be just somebody has is not feeling well, like what is the protocol for that? Like where is the nearest medical facilities? Right. And then what was their experience? How did they feel? How well did they feel attended to and listened to and understood and held in the container of healing by the facilitators who were running the show, right? Did the people who were running it, were they really keen and interested in understanding what my experience is and working with me to help me sort through what could have been the most profound experience of my life? Or they're kind of like, they kept to themselves and they just kind of let the thing run itself.
Right.
Those would be some questions that I would ask for a retreat center. All right. Primarily.
Cool. All right. So I feel way, way, way more educated on ayahuasca now. You've cleared up a lot of myths that we've heard, and we're excited. So where do we sign up? No, if someone wanted to actually reach out to you, maybe go to one of your retreats, because you have a retreat center that you work with men a lot. I mean, but if someone wanted to reach out to you specifically and wanted to work with you, what's the best way for someone to
one-on-one or at the ayahuasca place?
Either way.
Okay. Well, my personal website is michaeltiernoguide.com.
Okay.
We also, so michaeltiernoguide.com, that has everything on there, but it's, there's a lot of information there. There's a whole bunch of essays I've written. There's a whole bunch of content there. Then if you want to go to Peru and have what I think, at least in my mind, is in the top 5% of ayahuasca experiences that a person could have, that's heartsanctuaryretreats.com, heartsanctuaryretreats.com. And then if there's men out there that are interested in something that at the moment is focused on men, we have something happening in the United States a few times a year, and that's called Men of Integrity, and that's moi.community, moi.community. And we're going to hopefully have we will have some events for women that will be run by women in our broader community, but that's, just
future state.
That's for the futures. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're going to add those links to our show notes. So if you missed anything, don't worry at all. Just go to skepticmetaphysician.com. You'll see, go to his episode and you'll see all the links laid in there. So you can reach out to him. Awesome. One link contact. That's how we work around here. We want to connect them with great peoples. Michael, this has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us. We've talked to people before that have done ayahuasca and never published it because they were a mess. So it's nice to it's really nice to have a conversation with someone that's actually really looking at it from the perspective that you are, and that's really to help people and not about going out and having fun. Woohoo! Right? Because that's what this is about. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both. I really enjoyed speaking about this stuff really helps me understand what I know, so to speak, if you know what I mean. It's absolutely fun, and it's very fun to most of the other podcasts that I've done have been on other topics. I wasn't so sure. I wasn't quite realizing we were just going to be talking about ayahuasca today, but I was happy to.
in all honesty, I didn't expect us to talk all about ayahuasca the entire time either, but it just worked out that way because
it was great.
Didn't realize we had as many questions as we have until we started talking about it. So
they were great questions. I mean, I really appreciated you guys and appreciate you all. And I'm glad to have had this conversation with you.
Well, thank you, Michael. It's been a pleasure to have you as well.
Yes. Thank you. All right.